Yeah. Cadence through the ceiling, it's the vibe you give and running through my heart. Music drives my feelings, sending electricity right through my heart.
Hey everybody, what's going down? It's your girl Jay Renee. You know I always got something to say. And today, oh my goodness, we have an icon in the building. This man is responsible for the hits of Beyonce, Jay-Z, Jennifer Lopez, Money Long. He's worked with everybody from Tyrese to Shanice. And he's even behind mindless behavior. For all my young ones, you already know what that means. Y'all give it up for Mr. Walter Millsap III.
What's good? What's good? What's good? What's good?
One might ask, with a whole track list of all these legends and icons, how did you
hmm
get your start?
Ooh, that's such a loaded question, man. Well, it's for me, it started when I was about 4 years old. My dad actually played the B3 organ in church. My entire family are actually like musicians. And so growing up in church, you know, uh, everybody played an instrument. I wanted to play drums or keyboards or bass, guitars. So I grew up in church. My grandfather is a pastor. My uncles are pastors. And so I grew up with a family loaded with talent and sort of ministry and pastoralship. And so that was really kind of like my start. 4 years old, 5 years old, trying to play instruments and things of that nature.
Now, fast forward, you have this talent, but it's so ingrained in you that it's genetic, really. And when do you feel as though I can take this to a whole nother level? I'm going to take this outside of church, still remain within my faith, but progress to new levels.
Well, that didn't come until later, growing up and I grew up in Watts, California, so near the Nickerson Garden projects. And, when you're in projects, Watts, anything near Compton and what we would like call the hood, you kind of did everything, man. Played soccer, boxing, any sport you can, think of. I primarily, somewhat, although I was like playing instruments and things of that nature, but I was a real like dancer. I was into dancing. Like that was my thing, you know.
Like you
So
were
back
break
then,
dancing, you had that cardboard
no, I
out.
was, you had because breakdancing was it was a thing. It was kind of phasing out in a sense. Uh, they would call it like housing, like housing. It was like like somewhat a offshoot of breakdancing, but it was essentially like hip hop dancing. But back then, you had everyone who wanted to dance like Hammer or dance like Bobby Brown, you know, and so I had everything from the high top fade to the Gumby, and e- everyone was like, when it came to like school plays, who was gonna play Michael Jackson, I'm playing Michael Jackson all day. Like I'm doing all the choreography, doing all the songs. So it was a different time, but I was heavily into like performing, like dancing.
So you knew at a young age, like this is what you wanted to do. I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Mom, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an
Yeah,
entertainer, performer.
somewhat. I thought I would perform or play basketball. The basketball thing was kind of cut short very quickly because, when I would go try out for the basketball teams, I realized that I didn't have the height for basketball. So that wasn't going to work for me. But I really, really loved playing basketball. And then I really, really loved dancing and performing and things of that nature. But not until uh, maybe about 12, 13. did I really start like trying to make beats and like put music together and that whole thing.
What were your fondest memories of doing that?
Um, I think my mother had purchased me this Yamaha PSR, I believe it was called, keyboard, and it was forget how many keys it was, like a 30 something key keyboard, and then I don't know how I found this 4-track recorder, but I found a 4-track recorder somewhere. I don't know where I got it from. And that was really like the start and evolution of trying to like put beats together, you know, put, melody together, trying to write songs, and then that sort of kind of took on its own life around 12, 13.
And by 15, you were signed, correct?
Yes, man. 14, 15, I I found myself like tagging along at a lot of studios, uh, interacting with so many people. Like if I got to naming the folk, man, it'd be too many because I was just absorbing everything, like every little thing, hanging around at Yab Yum with Babyface, you know, uh, John, and those producers and songwriters. So, tagging along, trying to call Warren Campbell and and everybody, man. Like it was so many people. Kipper Jones, who at that time had um, so Warren Campbell's, um, Kipper Jones. Kipper Jones actually wrote much of the first Brandy album. So, for me being young, uh, meeting Kipper, Keith Crouch, Kenneth Crouch, and, the guys that, wrote I Want to Be Down, uh, and like such huge records. Um, it was very, very monumental for me to just be in the presence of like those giants, but just at a young age, uh, I was very impressionable in regards to like trying to soak up everything music, songwriting, beats and production, um, how to carry myself in regards to, recording an artist, and how to move in regards to writing and dividing publishing and just the nature of the business. I was a sponge.
And I love that because you have a lot of artists that tend to focus on one piece of the artistry, and it's like, no, it's best to know everything. That doesn't mean you're going to do everything, but it's best to know
Right.
everything just in case you have to step up to the plate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And which you fast forward, and that's, heavily influential in what it is I do now, just having all of those various understandings of the business, not just from a creative side, but also from, managerial and executive side as well.
I want to get into you developing and you curating a lot of sounds for these artists like Toni Braxton, Tyrese, Deborah Cox, Shanice, the list goes on. But you also have that special eye for bringing talent together, such as mindless behavior.
Hmm. Well, it's so interesting, because as I was sort of developing my own talent as a music producer and songwriter, I, it- you know, th I've always sat and just wanted to kind of view life through the lens of like just logical thinking. And around when I turned, I believe 17, I signed a publishing deal with John Platt over at EMI Music Publishing. And when I understood and fully grasped the concept of what publishing was or publishing is, and having song commitments, like 2 song commitments or 3 song commitments, and what the percentages are in regards to my input, or from a production standpoint or a writing standpoint. And once I kind of understood the philosophy behind it, like what makes up a song of 100%, because if I'm a producer and I only do the music, that's 50% of the publishing on writers and publishing share, and whoever wrote or writes the song, that's another 50% on there. So if I write, you know, 2 songs, then that's 100% if I do the beat. But if I write it and produce it, then that's 100%. And if I have to turn in, 2 songs for the year for my commitment, or 4 songs for the year, it's just numbers. And so I then said, okay, you have the Beyonce or the Destiny's Childs of the world, all these artists who, millions of writers and producers are trying to get songs to. And it's almost like making a basketball team or a football team. There's only so many spots for uh, those teams, or even writing, or being having any consideration for being on the record. So I started thinking, well, I come from the background of artist development, dancing and stage presence, and media training, and so why not just put that to use and start developing my own acts? And if I develop on my own acts, then I control that market share in regards to the publishing, writing, and then I can also give other people opportunities who may not have opportunities to, be a part of Alicia Keys, or the bigger artists. And so I started developing my own acts, and so I think one of the first acts I developed was this group called Last Stop. I named them Last Stop, and they were actually dancers. So I took 2 dancers from Christina Aguilera, and then 2 dancers from Britney Spears, and I called them Last Stop, and I developed them in my mother's living room. And this was during the Backstreet Boys NSYNC 98 Degrees era. So it was a pop group, and we had showcased for DreamWorks with Jheryl Busby, and Jheryl Busby signed the guys. And that was my first act. I'd gotten signed on my own, developed them, the whole nine. This is, 10, 11 years before the mindless behavior era ever, was even a thought. And so for me, I was always thinking, okay, how can I develop talent, put, new talent in the marketplace, and control the market from that aspect. And so after that, I developed, female artists, and did a deal with Universal. And I had another kid I met at a church in Los Angeles, at West Angeles Church, named Mike Little, Miclittle. And he was about 11 years old. And so that was my first signing, my youngest signing. And Jay-Z and L.A. Reid signed him over at Def Jam. His first single was called Put It in a Letter, featuring Neo. And it was on 106 in Park, that whole thing. And if you look it up, if you look it up, when you hear the song, you'll remember the record. And so that was like my third or fourth artist I had gotten signed and developed on my own. And things fell through the crack with him. And about a year later, I'm like, man, there's a void for like a boy group. And so um, that's when I hit Keisha Gamble, my then partner, and I said, listen, man, let's, because she and I were both around, the immature B2K uh, uh, folks who had developed them and things of that nature. So we kind of understood the formula. And, you know, maybe a year had gone by, but I convinced her, like, dude, let's do it. Like it's a void for a marketplace. Because in my eyes, I'm always just developing talent, you know, having hit a few home runs in regards to developing the talent, getting them signed to labels, that whole thing. So, I was fully confident that, hey, if we develop the right thing, getting to the labels is the easy part for me, and so lo and behold, we put the group together, and at that time it was a bidding war, for them. Same with Mike Little. I had, at that time Motown, Atlantic, Def Jam that was interested in Mike Little, and we end up going with L.A. Reid and Jay-Z at the time. And then same with Mindless Behavior. After developing them, we had maybe 5 labels wanting to sign them. And Clive Davis, who was nearing retirement, but he's still working with Sony at the time. I'll never forget because his son was my attorney. Doug Davis was my attorney at the time. And I'll never forget uh, showcasing for his father, Clive. And Clive uh, reaches over and says to me, "This is the best thing I've seen since the Jackson Five." And I thought that was so cool, especially coming from,
Dang, yeah, Clive Davis.
it was a big thing. And then I really knew I had something, but to hear him say that, I was like, okay, this could be something. And there was a bidding war, man. Clive, although he was kind of taking a back seat, he wanted to facilitate the deal. Sylvia Rome wanted to facilitate the deal. L.A. Reid wanted it at Def Jam. Jimmy Iovine and Vince, in their partnership at Interscope, they wanted it. So, we weighed the options and chose to partner with Jimmy over at Interscope. And so that was the development of the mindless behavior era. But, pre-mindless behavior, Walter Millsap has been developing acts since, 98, man.
No, and I love how you've been consistent. You've gone across every genre that there is. And even, what was it? I want to say about 2 weeks ago when we've gotten the Brandy and Kehlani Folded remix that it's one of those things where you could think about it, you could talk about it with your friends, but for it to actually come true, we was all like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what we needed. How did that come about?
Okay, so let me see, make a long story short. So Brandy and I were rehearsing for the Boys Mind tour, the tour that, she and Monica are going on. And while we were rehearsing, we were just talking and things of that nature. I started talking about, like, the hottest artist today. But I was really talking to Brandy about like her influence on today's culture, and how uh I call them her daughters. Like, and for singers, musicians alike, there are there are like Steph Curry's in the music business. Like Steph Curry, like Kobe was influential, LeBron was influential, Steph Curry changed the NBA. You know what I mean? The three ball is accredited to the Splash Brothers, Steph and
Yeah.
Klay Thompson,
Hmm.
right? Magic Johnson and Larry Bird changed the NBA literally. So you have a few game changers, and like, Kim Burrell is a game changer. Like, she has daughters and sons that she's created, just vocally speaking. Brandy is a game changer. Like she changed the way people interpreted, how you layer background vocals, how you stack, how you have harmonies flying into each other and doing all kind of different things. Brandy is a musical game changer. So, she and I was just talking, and I was just telling her, you know, just looking at the era right now and her influence on the Summer Walkers, the Kailanis, her, just all the girls, and you hear their music and you're like, yeah, they 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 listen to B, they listen to Brandy. And so I said, I really like this new Kaylani record, this folded record. And you can hear a lot of you in Kaylani. And Kaylani's not uh, ashamed or afraid to tell people. She tells people like Brandy is one of my biggest influences. And so, coincidentally, the producer and songwriter who wrote the song, Chris, is that's like my little brother. That's family. And so we got to talking, and Brandy's like, "Yeah, I really like Kaylani. I think she's really really dope." And I said, "You know what? Because there's all sorts of like vocal challenges that we've seen uh since the pandemic or something, where people do something and you get people to write their own verse and flip someone's song. And I said, Brandy, you ain't never did it. And I said, if you did it, like it would be groundbreaking because you don't do challenges or things of that nature. And she's
That's
like,
true. That is true. She does it.
yeah. She was like, she was like, nah, that ain't my thing. I said, I know it ain't your thing, but the people want to hear from you. Like I think the people, you have that much influence, musically on a bunch of people. And I think it would be cool. I think we should do sort of a challenge where you sing Kaylani's folded record. And so she kind of pushed back on it the first day. And then while we're talking, I text Chris, send me, the folded stems. I'm gonna try and get Brandy to record it while we're preparing for this tour. So the next day we're talking again. I said, man, listen, let's just do a verse and a hook on this folded, and we just put it on social media. Because I know in my head I'm thinking people are gonna go crazy when they hear Brandy singing
Yeah, we
this
did.
Kaylani this Kaylani joint, right? And I kept just tagging her. And so she said, finally, she was like, okay, you want to do it? I said, yes, let's do it. And she was like, all right, let's do it. So at the time we was in the rehearsal hall. So I told the guy at the rental place, I said, listen, go get me a studio mic. You got a U87? He said, yeah, we have one. I said, just bring it in here real quick, real quick. So, I'm talking to Todd, the engineer, and I said, Todd, put these stems in. Chris just sent it to me. And we started cutting the hook on the song. Um, down, 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 down. I don't know the lyrics by heart. Um, and we started cutting the main note. And once we finished the main note, I was like, okay, now let's stack some harmonies. Like let's do signature Brandy, like your interpretation. And then, we started arranging the harmonies. She started coming up with no low notes, and I'm screaming out little highs and mids to put there. And then I said, you know what will be dope? So what I'm gonna do is after the bridge, I'm gonna break all the music because people are fond of like your vocals, your backgrounds, and I'm gonna break all the music, and it's just gonna be a cappella, just your vocal, because it will be very different than how people usually do the little challenges and things of that nature. And she was like, man, you doing too much. I said, trust me. I know what I'm doing. I got this. Right. And so we did that. Then the next day, I hit Chris. I said, yo, man, we got the audio done. This is going to be groundbreaking. Nobody hears from Brandy. Like she doesn't do these type of things. And I bought, um, the 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 laundry basket from my house. So if you ever look at the video and it's a little white laundry basket with some clothes, that's from my house, right? And because at first I was gonna have her like folding clothes, and because
Yeah.
I filmed her with my iPhone, like all of that you see, I'm just filming her with my iPhone. And then I sent it to my man Zach. I said, Zach, edit this real fast.
Oh, that is
And
great cinematography right there.
and
Just will let you
that's how
know.
you got the video.
Because I don't think anyone thought of the magnitude that it would reach, because when it happened, we were like, okay, okay, hold up. The world has stopped at a certain point.
Hmm.
Because like you
Hmm.
said, Brandy does not do challenges.
Nah,
Brandy,
that ain't her
she is the
thing.
vocal Bible. And you have
Right, right.
Kehlani, who has millions and millions of followers that are still doing the challenge to this day, calling
Hmm.
themselves medium singers. It's just like, wow. Like the magnitude from both parties, just like, oh my goodness.
Right, right. And so when we finished it, edited the video, I sent it to Kaylani and Chris, and I put Kaylani and Brandy on group text. So we're all on group text after it's done. And, we're all vibing on ideas on how we're going to release it. Are we going to release it through Brandy's socials or Kaylani's socials? And so I'm like, let's just do a collab post. And they did a collab post. And then, Billboard picked it up, Shade Room, everybody, man, it went crazy. And Brandy and I, we're still rehearsing for the tour, but I'm showing her on social media. I'm like, listen, I told you it was going to be crazy. People love it. And so, but when she saw the response, I know what it did for her internally, because you had people commenting like, man, we've missed you. Man, you have no idea what you've done for the culture. And so I just thought it was a flower moment for Brandy. Like, just give me the flowers while I can smell them, you know. And so it was cool, man. It was cool, but it honestly was like spared a moment, me forcing her to do it, basically.
I'm glad you did. I'm truly glad you did. And I love why we're on the topic of giving flowers, because I saw online you and Toni giving um the late great Angie Stone her flowers before her untimely passing. And
Yeah.
it's so crazy because when Toni said, when she was in that girl group and the song Funk You Up, you like, hold up, what is that? But when you go listen to it, you like, so many records
Yeah.
come to mind, because
Oh, yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
what? What is
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah. 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 And so, that's the thing. Many people don't know, I managed Angie Stone for about 13 years. Uh, up to mainly her untimely death. Yeah, so I was in the last few albums that she released. Um, I produced the records, and we traveled the world, and we did some good things, man. She will forever be missed.
I want you to speak to the up and coming producers and artists, because I'm in a group chat where they have several artists and producers, but I want you to speak to them as far as the need for them to keep their sound while also growing it at the same time, like not losing yourself in the trends.
Right. I mean, because today, man, it's so difficult because um, social media is a gift and a curse all at the same time. It could be a very useful tool. And then on the flip side, it's counterproductive to, any creative person. Because at the end of the day, you are trying to develop yourself into this great songwriter, producer, or singer, all while needing validation from likes and thumbs ups. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like it's this dichotomy that's almost like an oxy, you know. while I'm influencing people, I'm being influenced. It's a weird situation. And you know, my thing is, people follow you for a reason, and they follow you because of, interest. I have a friend who is the social media like guru, and she says, we're no longer in into like social media, we're into interest media. What does that mean? People, they look up what they're interested in. The algorithm of, whatever DSP you're using, or or SMP you're using, it follows your interest. If I'm watching a bunch of basketball, guess what comes up? They're gonna show you a bunch of basketball clips, and today we're in interest media. And so in regards to like developing your craft and honing in on your talent, uh, you have to remember that while we don't like forget whose shoulders we stand on, because it is the past that really dictates how we move forward. We stand on the shoulders of the Isleys and Marvin Gayes and the Kimberells, the Brandys, and and while you're developing yourself, you don't forget that, but you try and take away from that to create your own little thing. But at the end of the day, there's nothing new under the sun, which is why you can hear a Kehlani's Folded and it reminds you of a Brandy or reminds you of another song. There's something that you can take the biggest record you know today, and it'll remind you of, this song or that song, or man, that melody sounds like so and so, because there's nothing new under the sun, and while you're developing your craft and developing you as an artist, I think it's very important to keep the main thing the main thing. Um, you Wow, you can't let social media dictate everything. You know what I'm saying? There's some good things that you can glean from it, but uh, for any artist or producer or songwriter coming up, just keep your head down and continue to just develop. Um, the hardest thing for anyone who is, sort of developing is staying enthusiastic about, you know, not being there right now, not being at the top of the mountain, because it's hard to see the top of the mountain and I'm like at the lowest level, but my mind wants to go to the top, but I gotta stay in the process and in the now of getting there, climbing, and you got to cherish the moments of the climb. The climb has its own successes as well. The top is the pinnacle. That's the resolve. Like, okay, I'm done. But the climb, it's you building success after success after success after success. You know, it's like demoing a song, and you listen to songs you demoed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you listen to songs you're doing now, and you see this progression. You know, you have to cherish those moments of progression. And I think we're just in a time where people want everything to happen right away. You know, we have instant meals, instant money, instant messaging. Everything is instant meal. I mean, microwaving. We don't want to wait for anything. We don't want anything to develop. And so, most of the most famous groups or artists that you know about, when they begin to tell you their story, uh, you start to see how much time it took to develop. You know, and you'll hear like some artists say, "I was in a group that failed. Then I went to this other group that failed, and then I went on my own, and then I did this song." but this is a 7-year span, 8-year span, or producers who were, who came under another producer and then went on their own, and then, a hit record came out of nowhere, but these are those climb moments, you know, and for any songwriter, producer, singer, artist, enjoy the climb, man. Enjoy the climb. Keep going. The best advice is, if you love it, don't stop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But here's the reality. You have to be real about things as well, because you have people being told they can sing when they're just subpar singers. People told that they can produce when they're just subpar producers. And for some of us at our best, we are D average. For some of us at our best, we are C minus. Some of us are B. Some of us are A minus, right? And that's just the reality of what it is. Everyone's not gonna be just A plus. You see what I'm saying? And you just find your niche, your niche, your niche. And uh, if it's for you, if it's for you, if you are that person, I just believe, the right timing, the right folk will find you. You'll be in the right uh, place, meet the right person, and there's nothing no one else will be able to do about it. Like, if it's for you, it's going to happen.
And I thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me on my podcast. And we're definitely going to continue to talk more. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so
You
much.
got it.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's your girl Jheryl. You know I've got something to say. Bringing you new episodes and new guests on your Talk With Me podcast exclusively on YouTube. Like, share, and of course subscribe. And follow us on IG too. All right, y'all. Bye.